Hello and welcome. Marty here from Orb Services and going to talk today about time management and some of the key principles behind that. Now, it may seem like a stretch to talk about toothpaste, laziness, and time management all together, but stick with me and I promise I'll bring it all together for you and you're going to get some great hacks in here that will help you really prioritize and manage your time better in a way that will be more meaningful to your life. I wanted to start with a quick story around toothpaste, and that's the relevance of this on the page here. There was a toothpaste factory that had a big problem. To oversimplify things, basically what was happening is toothpaste into the tube, tube into the box, box into the carton, carton sold to the customer. Customer unpacks the box and sells the products individually to the end user. Trouble was, sometimes the boxes got skipped and there would be a box sealed and put into the carton without actually having any toothpaste in it. Now, this obviously represents a big problem. So, of course, they do what any big organization did. They brought in a consulting agency, and the consulting agency spent heaps of money and heaps of time and worked out a way for them to solve this. And the way that they're going to solve this was for the organization to have in the production line, once the toothpaste tubes are in the toothpaste boxes, they're going to go onto a conveyor belt. And when they're on the conveyor belt, at a point in time, they'll get weighed. This is before they get grouped together and into cartons. That way, any of the boxes that don't have a tube in them, they know will be underweight. An alarm goes off, pauses the production line, and then no empty boxes will end up in the cartons. This is all fantastic. So they implement this, and it's all going well. Any of the light boxes that don't have toothpaste in them, they cause the alarm to go off. Somebody comes over because that's their job. They come over and they grab the box off. They double check that it is in fact empty, throw it out, reboot the system, and everything goes back into production. So this new system is working well and working well. They've lost a little bit of capacity, but that's okay because they've traded the capacity for an ability to have 100% efficient, not efficiency, but 100% correct product going out. So a few months go by and this works okay and works okay and works okay and everybody's rattling along with this. But one day, the person whose job it is to check on those boxes and to reset the system, they leave. So a new person is brought in. And then when the new person comes in, they're onboarded well and they're shown how to do everything and that all works fantastically. But a few weeks go by and the manager notices that they haven't heard the alarm for a few days. And they come down to see the new person and find out what's going on. And they find them sitting in the lounge room, sitting in the staff room on their phone watching TV. Now, as you can imagine, the manager is completely furious about this, demanding what's going on, an explanation for what's going on and why this new person thinks it's okay to be in there on their phone, vegging out. The new person says, calm down, come and have a look at what I've done. So he takes the manager out, and what has happened is he's set up a couple of fans just before the scales on the conveyor belt. As the empty boxes come down, the fans hit the empty box, blow the empty boxes off. A couple of times a day, comes out, picks up all the empty boxes. No empty boxes go through and into the cartons. No alarms go off. Everything works fantastic. So what we can see here is that through a very basic example, one of the fundamentals of time management is so often overlooked. And that is that it's important to prioritize what not to do and look for the least amount of steps in a process as possible. Time management is so broken in 2019 that it literally looks like we are pulling the cart in front of the horse. I have been to multiple talks on time management recently, or multiple events where time management has been the focus. And every single one has been talking about different tech hacks and how to do what we do faster. Now, don't get me wrong, there is a time and a place for tech hacks, but they are not at the start of the process. What I want to give you through this process is a way to fundamentally improve your life through the knowledge and power of how to manage your time better. There is a structure and an understanding of this. And the reason that I'm so passionate about this and the reason that I know it will improve your life is because it improved mine. It was about 10 years ago, and I was sitting in my boss's office explaining to him that I hadn't had time to do a report which he particularly wanted, that he then had deadlines around. And he explained very clearly to me, as it says on the screen, it wasn't that you didn't have time, you just didn't manage it well, which was a disgusting slap in the face that I didn't really want to admit at the time. But I swallowed hard and I realized that he was actually right, and much as I didn't want to admit it, there were things that I could have done better. The framework that I'm going to go through today gives you the power to put yourself in the position and in the driver's seat to know where you spend your time and how you spend your time, and really establish a correct way to do this that works for you. There isn't a right and a wrong way to do this. There's just a great way that works for you and matches your priorities. What I do with Orb Services, which is where you can find more information about me at orb.services, or if you want to reach out, you can contact me on LinkedIn /MartinLewis88. What I do with Orb Services is I help business owners get the results which matter to them from their business. So it's driven really by what you want from your business. If your business is performing financially, but you're chained to it and you need time back, then I work through the process to help deliver that. If your business is not performing financially, then I help fix that problem. And essentially, we're working always towards a balance of this is what you want from your business. Is your business currently giving you that? How do we fill in the blanks? So time management becomes a really critical piece of that, because for a lot of people, in one way, shape, or another, they're very, very directly affected by this. So it's very easy to sit here and say, oh yeah, I'm going to give you a framework that can help change your life and really improve your life. But how do we actually do that? So there's 3 very critical pieces that we're going to cover off today. Why does this matter to you? You have to establish a reason why this matters to you, or it's all very, very pointless. If there's no strong reason, then there's no motivation to do anything differently. We have to understand how it's broken, because if you don't understand how it's broken, then it's really difficult to fix a problem if you haven't defined what the problem is. And then we're going to look at, once you understand the first 2 pieces, how do you actually implement this in your life to create meaningful and lasting change? So let's start with the why. Now, there's different reasons that this would matter to you, and they're all very personal in their actual application. But the bottom line of it is very, very simple. How we manage our time is directly related to how satisfied we are, and then as a flow-on is related to how happy we are. There is a very clear correlation which has been studied. The people who are content with how they use their time are happier than those who are frustrated by the inefficiency or ineffectiveness of it. So the actual outcome of what this will look like to you will differ, but the bottom line is the more productive, and productive isn't even the right word, the more you can use your time in a way that aligns with your values and who you are and what you want to achieve, the happier you are going to be. There's obviously a playoff from how this works in your work life to how this works in your personal life. Let's take the following example. What would you do if you had an extra 3 weeks holiday a year? It scares the shit out of me, the amount of people who can't actually answer this question. But would you learn a language? Would you spend more time with your kids? Would you, go and volunteer overseas? Would you travel? You're still going to get paid. You're still going to earn the same amount of income every week, but you've got 3 weeks in the year to do whatever you want and focus on you. Sounds amazing, right? Sounds like an opportunity that most people wouldn't get. Well, the reality is we all would have this every day. 3 weeks a year equates to just 30 minutes a day. And that's 30 minutes a day from a 46-week year. That's a Monday to Friday, 46-week year. That doesn't include anything on the weekends, it doesn't include any of the public holidays, and it doesn't include doing anything differently on the 4 weeks holiday. So if you were to just find half an hour a day, it could add up to 3 weeks a year. The trouble is, time is a little bit like money in the way that compound interest works, and little bits and little bits and little bits over a long period of time stack up. But because there's no immediate downside that's visible to that, we're less forced to work or less motivated to work on the time management, because it's easy to say, oh, I'll just stay for another half hour. Oh, I'll just not do that. Oh, it was just half an hour on my phone, etc., etc. Those little bits and those little bits add up. And what people are often looking for is that extra 3 weeks. But that extra 3 weeks doesn't exist. What exists is little piece here, little piece here, little piece there that all add up to 3 weeks. What would you do with that time is completely up to you. But these are the things that motivate you. In life, we're only motivated by one of two things. We're either moving towards something which excites us and moving away from something which scares us. So if you can't find anything that you're really attached to that you think would be a great thing to do with your time, maybe it scares you enough that you want to make a change, because if nothing changes, in another 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, you're going to be in the same place. And I don't know about the people who are listening to this, but for me, that's really scary. I want to be moving forward. I want to be progressing. And if I wake up in another 5 years and I'm still in the same place, that represents a really scary reality to me. So I'm motivated to make changes both because of what I want to do and both because of what I want to stay away from. So we've covered off a little piece around why it matters to you. And whether it matters to you because you want to move towards something or away from something doesn't actually matter. What matters is that you have a reason that you're attached to, which is worth going through some pain for. Because the bottom line is, with like any change in your life, if you want different outputs, you're going to require different inputs, and different inputs are uncomfortable. What we want to do as humanity and as human beings, we want to do the same thing that we've always done. We're comfortable with that. We understand how that works. What we want to do is be able to go into new scenarios, but we don't want to go through the pain. And the reality is that doesn't really work. So what we need to do is understand the problem so that you can address it in a different way. I draw time management like this, in somewhat of a formula or an equation. And we say that time management is equal to the task prioritization that you have, multiplied by how efficiently you do those tasks, and multiply that by your work and your life. That is to say that your work is part of your life. They're not separate. They're not separate things. Part of why I think fundamentally, or not part of why I think, part of why time management is so fundamentally broken is because it's only focused in a large amount of cases, it's only focused on how efficient you can be at your work tasks. This is where all of the tech hacks come in, and the new way to do this, and more efficiency and more efficiency and more efficiency, and we apply that to our life. And we used to be at work for 8 hours, but now we can do 10 hours in 8 hours, and soon we can do 12 hours in 8 hours. It's a never-ending cycle. There has to be a prioritization there. I'm going to get into this in a little bit more detail later on. But the prioritization is the way where the real gains are to be found. You can prioritize things better, means that sometimes you're actually not going to do things. And when you apply them to your work and your life, you're continually motivated because you're seeing benefits both in your life and outside your life, and you're using one to leverage off the other. You'll see this in a bit with some of the examples in a moment. If we put some numbers behind this, we can see that given how we would look at time management now, there's an equation, or there's a total score of 16. If we only apply it to efficiency and work, we can get a maximum score of 4. which is 25%. Now, 25% is not bad. I'm sure if your business or your bank account improved by 25% every year or every month, that would be great. But if you could improve it by 100% and you only improved it by 25%, wouldn't that be a little bit disappointing? And we're never going to get a perfect score of 100%, but give yourself the capability to reach that level. Get away from putting the cart in front of the horse and really start to make a difference in your life and get into a faster vehicle. Learn how to prioritize well and be efficient, and applying this to your work and your life will start to yield massive benefits. Benefits which matter to you, which give you the time to spend your life in the way that you want to. You could start a side hustle, it could be more time with your family, it could be whatever you want, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it's important to you and that it means enough for you that you're going to make changes. So now that we understand why and how to build some kind of importance for it, and you've got a framework around this is the problem and this is how it's broken and this is how it can be improved, let's start to look at how to apply this into your life. So the first piece comes back to the old packing adage and auditing your priorities. This is common for anybody who's traveled, you'll know this. The rule of packing is take all of the things out that you think you're going to need, lay it all out on your bed, take half of every pile and put it back in the cupboard, and you'll probably still have more than you need for the trip. This is what our priority lists, this metaphor is a real representation of what our priority lists look like for the most part. Most people's priority lists are so long that they could live to be 1,000 and never get all of the things done. But they're all so important. And unfortunately, the reality is that they're not. Now, this will apply to some of your work priorities as well as some of your life priorities. One of the work priorities that I always pick on is emails, but it is not a priority to have an empty inbox. Everybody gets things that can be pushed. There are two questions which always get overlooked in this. Why is this important? Why is this a priority? And how much of this is enough? This second question about enough is a little bit of the lazy way of thinking coming back in there. What is the benchmark that you want to accept as this is your level? It doesn't have to be 100 out of 100 on every particular item. Sometimes you can do things at a 70, which is great. Sometimes you can do things at a 50, which is great. Sometimes it does need to be 100. Sometimes it needs to be over and above 100. And you need to find a way to do that. But asking these two fundamental questions when it comes to your priority list will be the start of spending more time in a way that fits with what you want to achieve in your life. How I work through clients with this is a formula that looks very simple. You've got it up on your screen here. How important is a task versus how urgent is a task? Everything is important of some level. Everything is urgent of some level. Basically, you can see here, the bottom left is the Bermuda Triangle. That's the red zone. Nobody wants to go in there. Things go in there to die and never return. The blue section is what we call the busy blues, where things are kind of important and they're kind of urgent, or they're a little bit more of one than the other. But they're when you know that person, we've all know that person. Oh, how are you? I'm busy. So much going on. But what are you actually getting done? What are the things that are actually happening in your life? The green zone is the most important area. That's where the priorities are most important that matter to you. Warren Buffett has a famous process called the 5 and 25. What are your top 25 priorities? And then write down your top 25 priorities and then circle within that top 25 your top 5. Then cross out the 20 that you left out. Because you only have so much bandwidth, you only have so much capacity. So if you're focused across 25, you're never going to make it. But if you focus on 5, you're going to be able to have some impact there. And better to get 5 done than have 25 undone. Once you know what your priorities are, you have to audit your time and map your time back to these priorities. This is a really confronting process because for a lot of people, and I include myself in this, for a lot of people, it's uncomfortable to look at how much time you're not actually spending. There's a very big gap between what people feel they are spending and what they are actually spending. When you map out your time and you look at this is exactly where I spend it, I do mine in an Excel spreadsheet with half an hour blocks for each day. And I color code them half an hour windows. So there's 48 windows. Obviously I'm asleep for some, but then it maps back to what are the how did I spend that half an hour block? And does it fit into what I would consider a red area, a blue area, or a green area? You need to remove the emotion from it and look at the facts for how you spend your time in a way that you can visualize it. There's different tech behind this. There's a ton of different tools. It really doesn't matter. You could write it on a piece of paper for all I care. But you need to, in some way, shape, or form, remove the emotion from it and think about how did you actually spend your time in relation to what are your priorities. I've done this for not hundreds of people, but tens of people, probably 35 or 40 people. Every single time there is a wow moment of, holy moly, I felt like I was really busy there, but actually there's all this space here that would actually consider red. So there's time there. And once you understand that, you start to take ownership of it, the rest of the process can begin to flourish. These are some of the things that you can get into now. The auditing your priorities and auditing your time are a start standard. You can't really do too much else without those. They're the foundation principles for everything else. These are now some of the principles that you can get into to further enhance that. So you have to own your choices. This is a big one. Remove the words busy and the phrase didn't have time. Busy doesn't mean a thing if it's not meaningful. Replace the phrase I didn't have time with things like things took longer than expected. I didn't prioritize that well, so I didn't make it at the time that I thought I would. The difference between that, they're such small things, but they take you from a place of victim perspective to a place of ownership and where you're in charge. And again, this can be a really confronting thing for some people. But when you start to own your own choices, you then become accountable to yourself. And when you have that accountability to yourself all of the time, it helps reinforce that habit. It helps build that habit and build that strength and build that resilience, which will then motivate the next decision, which makes the next decision, and so on and so forth. Number 2 is rethink your to-do list. One of the big things is have a not to-do list. I mentioned before Warren Buffett's 5 and 25 rule. Pull your top 3 or top 5 to focus on and get them done. Make sure that this priority list, this to-do list, is prioritized along with your priorities overall. Because if you look at your to-do list and it has nothing to do with what you really prioritize in your life, why are those items on your to-do list? Yet every time I've done this with somebody, there are items there and you just say, why is that there? And these things have just accumulated on everybody's list and they don't need to be there. So pull a not to-do list together and rethink your to-do list to make sure that you have your top 3 or your top 5 items to focus on. Train your staff. This one's a massive bugbear, and it's for most of the managers or the owners in the room, particularly if you've been an owner and you've gone from a process of starting your business and doing everything to then have to train somebody can be a really hard task because you've never actually had to compartmentalize the task. You've done it for so long, it just works. That's how you do it. And to break that down into steps and train somebody can be a really confronting and really challenging experience, but it will pay stupidly good dividends. If a task takes you an hour a week and it took you 4 months, it took you 16 weeks to train somebody to do it, you still have 40 hours left in the year to make up. Not quite 40, but you have more than double your time back. So you've got your time plus you paid for the time of the other person. In a year, you've still more than paid for yourself, and that benefit is ongoing forever. So get beyond the fact that it's quicker to do it yourself, because it is this one time, but it's not forever. And as far as nobody doing it as good as you can or to the standards that you can, that's because they haven't done it for as long as you've done it. Be relevant, compare apples with apples, and give them the opportunity to flourish, and you'll be surprised more often than not. Batching your tasks. Coming back to pick on emails here, but if you're going to put all of these food, if you're going to prepare all of these meals, you wouldn't do them one at a time. You do big batches and put them together. So why are things different in our job? If you have your emails open all day, that's one of the number one things that will kill your productivity. People will survive without you for a couple of hours. And the thing that I come back to is having a clean inbox really a sign of success against your priorities? And if it is, congratulations. But if you're really honest with yourself, I've never had anybody tell me that the answer to that is yes. So if it's not, why are you so stressed about it? Batch your tasks, check your emails for a couple of hours a day at different points. So like half an hour in the morning, an hour at lunch, half an hour at the end of the day. Those time blocks are going to come back to that, but they'll force you to be productive as well if that's the only window you have. You won't get bogged in the rabbit hole of this is my emails and I looked at one and then 4 emails later and 3 hours later I'm still in my emails and I haven't done the original task that I went in there for. Monotask. This is a big one, obviously the opposite of multitasking. Do one thing, do it well, do the next thing. There's a button on your phone called airplane mode. In between checking your emails, put it on, set your timer for 90 minutes or 60 minutes. Give yourself an opportunity to actually just focus on one task. The world is so fragmented, attention spans are so fragmented at the moment that this is really quite challenging. You may have to start at 30 minutes. But you will be surprised at what you can achieve if you focus on this and give yourself a dedicated window without distractions. I'm all for an open door policy, but sometimes it's good if you're a manager to be able to close that door and say, look, if the door's closed, I'm doing something that I need, you're doing something that you need time to do. People need to respect that and work their day around that as well. Deadlines and time limits. I touched on this before, even with the little things like your emails. This is a great one for the procrastinators as well. Give yourself a start and stop time to do something, particularly with big tasks. Starting a big task and spending 90 minutes on it or spending 2 hours on it is better than not spending time on it at all, because you're still waiting for that magical big time where you can just dedicate your whole day to it and it's going to work. It's kind of like having the extra 3 weeks a year. It very rarely ever happens. You have to make little bits of time all the time. Set a start and stop time for your tasks and it will force you to be productive. A big one that I always work through with owners and managers who are on salary, who don't get paid overtime, give yourself a home time. So many people don't do this and then they're not motivated to do things any faster because, well, you got to stay here you're not going to get paid. What's the rush? Think about how productive you've been on your last day before you went on holidays. When you're motivated to get out of there, you can get heaps of things done. But you've got to have those motivations. This is why you have to have that really strong why. And it's great if that links to something outside of your life, because then it's important for you to be efficient at work. so that you can get home and do the things that are really important to you at home. Productive meetings, I can't stress this enough. There's a million different ways to do it, but if you're getting stuck in meetings regularly, you need to question why you're having that meeting, look at how efficient that meeting could be, start to set some objectives for the very basic question to ask, why are you having this meeting? What is the outcome from this meeting that you need to get? So many meetings occur for the sake of having a meeting, and it is just one of the biggest time sinks within the corporate world. After you've done all of those things, start to look for some tech hacks. There are some great tools out there which can literally help you do almost anything in a faster capacity. But the important question is, do you really need to be doing what you're doing any faster? If you put this piece first, the rest of it cannot work because you haven't built the foundation and the platform for anything to work. Once you have a clear direction of this is the task that I would like to do, and I'm now this is the outcome that you need to do it, and you're now exploring ways to do that faster, now you're being productive. So let's do a quick recap. You've got some kind of attachment and some kind of meaning to why this matters to you beyond work, beyond just being able to do your work job faster. Because if doing your work job faster is all you care about, then it's never going to be enough to really affect meaningful change for you. You understand the components which lead to time management and how they can impact your life, in particular organizing that prioritization and looking at things beyond your work scope to make sure that there's a meaningful impact to be had there. When you're in this position, now you can continually improve and continually live a life which is more fulfilling. You're not going to get this right straight out of the gate. You're not going to go from, and nobody is ever perfect at this. For as good as you will ever get, there will always be ways to improve. So begin the process, start, and don't look for perfection, look for improvement. Look to be better at time management than you were yesterday, than you were last week. When you find those little wins, they'll motivate you to keep going and look for the next one. There's a quote here around time which I think is really, really prominent. I think it sums up everything to do with time management really well, and Harvey Mackay wrote it some years and years ago. I'd love to get your feedback on this, and if you think it's been valuable to you, you can reach out and contact me on LinkedIn /MartinLewis88 or online at my website orb.services. I really hope that this has been valuable for you and that you can implement this into your life and see some meaningful change which will actually matter to you. I wish you much success with it, and I hope you have a rockin' day. Thanks for tuning in.